Imagine this. The man once called the greatest trader who ever lived is now sitting alone in a dark Manhattan hotel room. The curtains are closed, the phone is quiet, the ticker has stopped printing, and the only sound in the room is the echo of memory. Jesse Livermore had lost everything. Again. He had seen markets collapse and rebuild, fortunes vanish and return. But this time, something was different. This time, it wasn't just the money that was gone. It was the belief that he could rebuild. You see, for years, Livermore had lived by rhythm. Loss, recovery, victory, collapse, and rise again. Each cycle fed his legend. Each rebound proved his genius. But now, the rhythm was broken. The market that once danced with his instincts had turned cold. His rules had failed him. Or rather, he had failed his rules. He'd scaled too fast, trusted too deeply, and traded too emotionally. He looked in the mirror and saw a stranger staring back. The same man who once shorted a nation's panic, now drowning in his own. He once wrote in his trading diary, "There is nothing new in Wall Street. There can't be, because speculation is as old as mankind. Whatever happens in the market today has happened before and will happen again." But what he never wrote, what he perhaps couldn't admit, was that the pattern he was describing wasn't just the market's, it was his own. The same man who conquered chaos was now trapped in it, not by the market, but by his mind's addiction to victory. And that's the cruel paradox of success. The very mindset that brings you fortune is the same one that can lead you to ruin. In that silence, Livermore realized the truth that every trader must face one day. The hardest thing in trading is not losing money, it's losing confidence. Because without confidence, every chart looks like noise, every trade feels like a threat, and every tick becomes a reminder of what you used to be. The man who once ruled the tape now couldn't trust himself to read it. He later told a friend, "The market is the same now as it was 50 years ago because human nature never changes." But that night, in that dark room, he wasn't studying human nature, he was fighting it. He was staring at the real opponent, himself. His greatest war wasn't on the exchange floor, it was within his own soul. That's where every trader's turning point happens. When the charts fade and the mirror begins to speak, it's in that moment of emotional collapse that real understanding begins. The realization that success isn't about winning trades, it's about surviving yourself long enough to learn from them. Livermore's low point wasn't the end of his trading, it was the beginning of his awakening. The awakening that profits don't define you, discipline does. That losing money doesn't break you, losing control does. And that the true secret of scaling safely isn't how big your trade is, it's how still your mind can remain when everything around you is falling apart. Comment hook. Have you ever hit that low point where your confidence was gone and you had to rebuild yourself from scratch? Share here how you came back. The year was long gone, but the echoes of Jesse Livermore still whispered through every trading floor, through the screens, the charts, the flicker of numbers rising and falling like waves. His life, a story of brilliance, fortune, and ruin, became more than a tale about money. It became a mirror for every person who has ever faced temptation, fear, and ego. Because at its heart, Livermore's legacy wasn't about trading, it was about truth. He taught that no strategy, no system, no algorithm could ever replace the one skill that decides every outcome, emotional control. He said, "The market is never wrong, opinions often are." To him, that wasn't a line about stocks, it was a lesson in humility, because the moment you argue with reality, you've already lost the trade. Livermore showed that every chart tells two stories, one about the market and one about the mind watching it. When prices rise, you meet greed. When they fall, you meet fear. And in between those two extremes, you meet yourself. He believed the greatest traders were not gamblers or geniuses, but observers, people who could sit still while the world screamed around them. "It was never my thinking that made me the big money," he wrote. "It was always my sitting." And that line still echoes through every generation, because patience will always beat prediction. Silence will always outlast noise. But Livermore's story also carried a warning that knowledge without balance leads to collapse. He proved that a man can master the market and still lose the war inside his own heart. Success, he said, doesn't test your strategy. It tests your stability. Because after every win, ego whispers, do it again. And that whisper is how every empire begins to fall. His life, in the end, was not a tragedy. It was a parable. A reminder that fortune and failure are just reflections of one thing, the state of your mind. The market doesn't destroy people. It merely reveals them. And maybe that's why Livermore still matters, because he turned his entire life into a lesson about human nature. He showed us that markets are not battles of finance, they're battles of emotion. That price charts don't show numbers, they show behavior. And that wealth, real wealth, is not measured in profits, but in discipline. Closing reflection. A century has passed since Jesse Livermore placed his final trade. The world has changed. Screens replaced ticker tape, algorithms replaced paper charts, but human nature hasn't moved an inch. Greed still blinds, fear still spreads, ego still ruins, and somewhere a new trader still learns the same lesson the hard way. So if there's one truth Livermore left behind, it's this. Greater than the market will teach you everything, if you're humble enough to listen. Final comment. Hook. What's the biggest lesson you take from Livermore's story? Discipline, patience, or emotional control? Drop your answer below and let's keep his legacy alive.